Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're attempting something pretty ambitious, philosophically speaking.
Definitely feels like we're trying to bridge a gap maybe one philosophers often see as, well, unbridgeable.
Exactly. We're trying to create a moral framework and ethics, but starting from a place that seems to deny the very possibility of ethics.
Solipsism, the idea that only my own mind is sure to exist.
Right. So we're diving deep into what seems like a philosophical impossibility. A solipsistic ethics. It sounds completely contradictory.
It really does, on the surface. I mean, ethics usually needs other people, right? Other moral agents who can be affected, who feel things.
But solipsism says, fundamentally, I can only be certain about me, everything else. Maybe it's just a complex illusion, a construct of my own mind.
So the whole foundation for traditional ethics seems to crumble before we even start.
That's the challenge. How do you build ethics from absolute zero, from just radical solitary self-consciousness? That's our mission for this deep dive.
We're attempting a kind of philosophical shortcut, you could say.
Yeah, synthesizing two giants, Edmund Husserl, with his deep dive into the structures of consciousness phenomenology.
And David Hume, the empiricist, focus on passion, observation, and what actually motivates us.
So for you listening, think of this as a way to see how these huge, often opposing philosophical systems might, just might, be woven together.
First, we need to see if we can even construct the idea of another, an alter ego using Husserl's tools, starting from that solipsistic point.
And then, assuming we could do that, we need Hume to provide the moral engine, the reason why we should care or act towards this constructed other.
And the kicker is, we have to try and do all this while staying, theoretically at least, within the confines of that single original consciousness.
It's a real philosophical puzzle.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to say, okay, maybe others exist. We have to figure out from within why they matter morally.
The paradox itself is what drives this whole inquiry, really. If ethics needs others, but solipsism denies them,
Then the only way out seems to be if the existence and the moral weight of this other are somehow generated by the self, constituted from within.
Okay, so let's lay the groundwork. We have to start at Husserl's starting line, the solipsistic foundation.
Where does he begin?
Well, he tackles a question that, the empiricist tradition, particularly someone like Hume, didn't really focus on in the same way. The fundamental question of the existence of other human beings. Hume based his morality on passion, sympathy, observing how people interact. But he kind of takes it for granted that those other people are actually there, with minds like ours.
He assumes the social world exists.
Pretty much. Husserl, coming from phenomenology, can't make that assumption. He needs to address the bedrock issue. How can I even know or constitute the idea that there are other people?
And his method for doing this is famously radical, isn't it? The epiche, the transcendental reduction.
Oh, absolutely radical. It's not just a thought experiment. Husserl describes it as a complete shift in your philosophical attitude, a bracketing.
Bracketing, like putting something aside. What exactly does he ask us to put aside?
Essentially, everything objective, the entire material world as we normally assume it. All our presuppositions, scientific facts, cultural beliefs, even initially our own body conceived as just a physical object out there.
Wow, okay, so everything external, everything alien to my immediate, undeniable consciousness.
Exactly. He's not saying the world doesn't exist. That's important. He's saying, let's suspend our belief in its existence for a moment. Let's see what's left when we only accept what is absolutely, unquestionably certain.
It sounds like performing a kind of philosophical surgery, cutting away all assumptions. What's left after this radical bracketing?
What remains, according to Husserl, is the pure ego, just consciousness itself and its inherent structures, its processes, thinking, perceiving, feeling, willing, but purely as acts of consciousness.
And this residue, this pure ego floating in its own awareness. This is the wholly solipsistic world.
That's the term, yes. It's the absolute starting point. The ego is alone here, contemplating its own being as the only rock-solid certainty.
Okay, so this purified realm of certainty, Husserl gives it a specific name, right? The sphere of ownness, Eigenheit.
Yes, Eigenheit. It's a technical term, but crucial. It defines the boundary of what is absolutely indubitable for the ego.
So inside this sphere.
Inside the sphere of ownness, everything is non-alien. From this, as he puts it. It's the founding layer of reality for this reduced ego. Consciousness is completely transparent to itself here. Everything's directly accessible, totally evident. There's no possibility of external interference or distortion messing things up.
It sounds a bit like Descartes' cogito. I think, therefore I am. That point of absolute certainty.
It's very much in that tradition, yes. Finding that Archimedean point of certainty where doubt simply has no place to get a foothold.
But pure abstract consciousness feels incomplete. How does the ego start understanding itself or crucially begin building outwards towards anything else? Does it have an anchor within this sphere?
It does, and this is critical. Even within this radically reduced sphere, one thing retains a unique status: the animate body.
Yeah.
My body.
Okay, so the body isn't bracketed away entirely.
Not in the same way as, say, a chair or a tree. My own body isn't perceived merely as an external object. It's the lived, experienced vessel of the ego. It remains intrinsically mine within the sphere of ownness.
How does Husserl distinguish it? What makes it special within this solipsistic world?
He points to 3 key characteristics that set my animate body apart from everything else, even other physical bodies I might perceive.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, it's the absolute place of perception, the 0 point, the here. The entire perceived world, even if bracketed, radiates out from this body. If I move, the whole perceptual field shifts relative to this central point. It's the irreplaceable center of sensory experience.
Makes sense. The here, from which I see there. Second characteristic.
The unique experience of movement, what he calls kinesthesia.
Synesthesia is like the feeling of moving.
Exactly, but specifically the feeling of moving my body through volition. I will my hand to move, and it moves. It's this direct, effortless command over movement, an experience totally different from, say, pushing a heavy object or being moved by something external. This immediate control defines my body's physical domain for me.
And the third point.
It's the locus of sensations.
Yeah.
Pain, warmth, cold, touch, pressure. I experience these directly in this body. They aren't observations of external events. They are immediate, non-transferable feelings located right here.
So this 3-part connection, the pure ego, intrinsically linked to this specific body as the center of perception, voluntary movement, and sensation. That's the self, within the sphere of ownness.
That's the irreducible unit Husserl identifies. The self is constituted by this unity of consciousness and its uniquely experienced animate organism.
Okay, we've established the self grounded in its own certainty and its lived body.
Right.
But hang on, the paradox immediately comes back, doesn't it?
How so?
The source material points out something crucial. To even define this sphere of ownness, this Eigenheit, the ego have to implicitly understand the concept of something not its own, something alien.
Yes. To draw a boundary, you inherently presuppose something outside the boundary.
So defining mine seems to require the concept of not mine, which suggests an alter ego, another self. The definition forces the problem back into view.
Precisely. The ego, having walled itself off in certainty, now faces the monumental task. It has to somehow transcend its own sphere, its Eigenheit, and construct the possibility of an alter ego.
But here's the constraint again. It can only use the materials already available within that sphere of ownness, right? You can't just magically import an other.
Exactly. It's like trying to build a bridge using only materials found on your own side of the chasm. This internal process of reaching out, of constituting the other from within the self, is what Husserl calls empathy.
Okay, empathy. This isn't just feeling sorry for someone then. It's a technical, constructive process in Husserl.
Very technical. It's the engine that drives this transcendence. And it's not simple. It involves a sequence, a dynamic interplay of 3 key components.
All right, let's unpack this carefully. Component 1, appresentation. What does that mean?
Appresentation basically means making co-present. It's a fundamental process of perception and inference. We constantly do it with objects. Like when you see the front of a house, you don't just see the facade. You automatically, implicitly co-perceive the existence of the back, the sides, the inside. You present the unseen parts based on the seen part and your understanding of what a house is.
Okay, I see the front, I infer the rest is there. That makes sense for objects. I can usually check it too, right? Walk around the house, see the back.
Exactly. With physical objects, the presented part, the back, can potentially become a presented part, seeing the back. The inference can be fulfilled by direct perception.
Well, I suspect it's different when we apply this to the alter ego.
Dramatically different. This is where the solipsistic barrier really shows itself. The ego perceives another body out there, a body that looks and moves like its own animate organism. It occupies a there relative to my...
So, based on seeing this similar body...
The ego presents another ego, another consciousness, another sphere of ownness, residing within that other body, animating it just like my ego animates mine.
But here's the catch, the massive problem you mentioned, this appresentation, this inference of another mind.
It can never be directly verified. Never. There's no way to have a corresponding, fulfilling presentation.
Why not? Why can't I just check?
Because checking would mean gaining direct, immediate access to the other's consciousness, to their sphere of ownness, their nicht fremdes. You'd have to literally be them, experience their subjectivity from the inside.
Which is impossible. I can't be me and someone else simultaneously. That violates the whole starting point.
Exactly. The moment you hypothetically stepped into their shoes, they would cease to be other and just become another part of your experience. The structure forbids direct verification. It's an inherent limitation.
Wow. Okay, so the existence of the other mind is purely inferred, fundamentally unverifiable. That feels precarious. How does Husserl keep the whole structure from collapsing into radical doubt right there?
He needs more scaffolding. This leads to the second component of empathy, pairing association. This operates at a more passive level.
Passive synthesis, meaning it sort of happens automatically.
Pretty much. It's not a deliberate logical step initially. You have two distinct data points immediately given in your perception. Your own animate body, experienced from the inside here, and the other body, perceived externally there.
Okay, my body, their body.
You observe similarities. The other body has a similar form. It moves in ways that seem analogous to your own willed movements, kinesthesias. It seems to react to stimuli. This perceived similarity establishes a fundamental link.
A unity of similarity, the source calls it.
Yes. And this perceived likeness triggers what Husserl describes as a living mutual awakening of sense. They become linked as a pair. They're recognized as being entities of the same kind. Even though one consciousness is lived and the other is only inferred, it creates an analogical bridge.
So pairing sets up the connection based on likeness. What's the third component? How does the actual sense of being another conscious self get transferred across that bridge?
That's analogizing apperception. This is where the more active transfer happens.
Okay, break that down.
It works like this. The ego knows with absolute certainty from its eigenheit that my body is an animate organism governed by my conscious ego. That's the bedrock.
Right.
Then, based on the similarity established through pairing, the ego performs an analogical transfer. It sees the other body behaving as if it's an animate organism, so it transfers the sense animate organism onto that other body.
Okay, I accept the other body is like mine in that it's alive, seemingly self-moving.
And if you accept it's an animate organism like yours, you're logically driven to accept the implication. There must be a governing ego over there, structurally like your own, making it behave that way. The sense governed by an ego is transferred by analogy.
So the alter ego is constructed piece by piece, appresentation infers it, pairing links it based on similarity, and analogizing apperception transfers the sense of being an ego-driven organism. It's entirely built from analogy to my own case.
That's the Husserlian model, yes. An intricate construction built solely from the materials within the sphere of ownness.
But we still hit that same wall, don't we? The verification problem. Since I can never directly access that other consciousness, how do I know it's not just a sophisticated automaton, a philosophical zombie? The pseudo-ego problem, as the source calls it.
This remains a persistent challenge within the system. Husserl acknowledges it. The only way to verify, and verify is maybe too strong a word, perhaps confirm or support is better. The constructed alter ego is through continuous observation of its harmonious behavior.
Harmonious behavior, meaning?
Meaning the other body has to consistently act in ways that make sense as if it were governed by an ego like mine. Its actions, reactions, expressions, maybe even its speech patterns need to form a coherent, understandable, and somewhat predictable whole that suggests intentionality and inner life, not just random or purely mechanical responses.
Okay, so I watch the other, and if its behavior seems consistent and purposeful,
it lends ongoing support to the initial appresentation. It makes the inference seem more plausible, more stable.
But this raises a really critical, maybe uncomfortable question. Who gets to decide what counts as harmonious behavior?
Now you've hit the core vulnerability. According to the source analyzing Husserl here, the standard for harmoniousness is set by the observing ego.
Wait, so my expectations, based on my understanding of my own behavior, determine whether the other's behavior counts as evidence for their consciousness.
That's the implication. The behavior has to be harmonious with what I expect an ego-driven organism to do. This introduces a kind of circularity, doesn't it?
It sounds like it. The constructed other's reality seems entirely dependent on my judgment. It lacks true autonomy because its validation comes from fitting my mold. The pseudo-ego possibility seems hard to banish completely.
It's a deep problem in this interpretation of Husserl. The other risks becoming just a reflection, validating the primary ego's worldview rather than standing as a genuinely independent center of consciousness.
It feels like we're close, but still haven't quite secured the otherness of the other. Does Husserl have one more step to try and anchor this? The source mentions something about space.
Yes, the spatial distinction, the difference between here and there. This is Husserl's final move to try and ground the other's distinctness in something more objective, or at least structurally necessary.
How does space help?
Well, I experience my animate body, the locus of my consciousness, as being irrevocably here. It's the 0 point of my spatial world. I perceive the other animate body as being there at a distance in a different location.
Okay, here versus there. Simple enough.
But crucially, through my kinesthesias, my ability to move, I know I can change my location. I can walk over there. If I do, that there becomes my new here.
Right. My perspective shifts.
And I perceive the other as experiencing their world from their here, which is currently my there. I understand that if I were there, I would perceive the world from that perspective. This reciprocal understanding of spatial perspectives lends support.
But how does this grant genuine otherness? I can imagine being there, but that doesn't make them real.
The key is the mutual exclusion. I cannot simultaneously occupy both here and there. My presence here excludes my presence there, and vice versa. This fundamental spatial exclusivity, the impossibility of merging locations, is what finally grants the constructed other a measure of genuine, actual otherness. Their spatial independence anchors their inferred psychological independence.
So the fact that we can't be in the same place at the same time is the ultimate proof. Well, not proof, but the strongest support for their separate existence.
It provides a structural basis for their distinctness that doesn't rely solely on the potentially biased judgment of harmonious behavior. It's a spatial separation that implies an existential separation.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a philosophical journey just to establish the possibility of another person from a solipsistic start. Husserl gives us the alter ego, constructed through empathy, anchored in space. We have the what?
A fragile what, perhaps always shadowed by the verification problem, but structurally constituted nonetheless.
But now we hit the next massive hurdle. We have this constructed other. Why should I care about them? Why should I act ethically towards this complex inference? Husserl's empathy built the stage, but there are no actors motivated to be moral yet.
Exactly. Husserl gave us the existence, but not the motivation. For the why of ethics, for the engine that drives moral sentiment and action, we need to turn away from pure phenomenology and integrate the work of David Hume.
We need Hume's sympathy to work on the alter ego constructed by Husserl's empathy.
Precisely. Once Husserl gets the other onto the philosophical map, so to speak, Hume's theory of morality, which is all about feelings and passions, can finally find something to latch onto.
And Hume's framework is radically different from Husserl's, isn't it?
Yeah.
No transcendental reductions here. It's all grounded in experience, observation, human nature.
Completely different world. For Hume, morality isn't found in abstract reason or transcendental structures. It's fundamentally about pain and pleasure.
Simple as that.
As a starting point, yes. Virtuous actions or character traits tend to produce a feeling of pleasure or approval in the observer upon contemplation. Vicious ones produce pain or disapproval.
Okay, but that's my pleasure or pain when I observe or think about an action. How does the pleasure or pain of the other person, the one constructed by Husserl, get into the picture and affect me?
That is the absolute core of Hume's moral psychology. The mechanism is sympathy. Hume identifies sympathy not just as feeling sorry for someone, but as a fundamental principle of human nature, the chief source of our moral distinctions. It's the bridge across the gap between consciousnesses.
The gap Husserl works so hard to define. So how does sympathy bridge it? How does their feeling become mine?
Well, obviously we don't have telepathy. We can't directly access their feelings. So Hume says we rely on external signs.
Like what?
Their behavior, facial expressions, tone of voice, tears, laughter, all the observable manifestations of their inner state. The same clues, actually, that Husserl relied on for harmonious behavior.
Okay, I see someone crying. That's an external sign. What happens next in my mind, according to Hume?
That external sign first produces an idea of the feeling in your mind, an idea of sadness in this case. Ideas, for Hume, are like faint copies of original impressions or feelings. So it's initially just an intellectual awareness that person seems sad.
Just an idea, not very motivating yet.
Right, but then sympathy kicks in. Hume describes it as a psychological mechanism that converts this faint idea of sadness back into a strong impression or feeling of sadness within you, the observer.
So the idea gets transformed into the actual feeling.
Yes. The external signs idea trigger the sympathetic conversion, and you end up feeling a version of the same sentiment yourself. You feel a pang of sadness because they appear sad. You feel a glimmer of joy because they appear joyful. It's a powerful transfer of effect.
That's incredible. So through sympathy, their inner state resonates within me. The barrier between minds becomes permeable to feeling.
Exactly. And the ethical implications are immediate and profound. Because of sympathy, actions that affect someone else, causing them pain or pleasure, don't just happen over there. They reverberate back and affect us, the observers, emotionally.
So we get this immediate internal emotional feedback on the consequences of actions, our own or others. We're not isolated observers anymore.
They become participants in a shared web of sentiment.
Now, Hume doesn't think this sympathy is always equally strong, does he?
Yeah.
The source mentions relations that influence its intensity.
Correct. Sympathy isn't an on-off switch, it's a dimmer. Two main relations govern its strength: resemblance and contiguity.
Resemblance, meaning how similar we are.
Yeah. Yes. At a basic level, there's the natural resemblance we all share as humans, similar bodies, similar basic passions. This provides a baseline for sympathy. But Hume notes that peculiar similarities strengthen the connection immensely.
Like what kind of peculiar similarity?
Sharing the same language, manners, culture, nationality, even similar character traits or professions. The more points of resemblance we perceive, the easier it is for their sentiments to catch onto ours, the stronger the sympathetic transfer.
Okay, so similarity boosts sympathy. What about contiguity?
Contiguity is about closeness. This can be literal spatial proximity. We tend to sympathize more strongly with people who are physically near us. Think of a disaster happening in your own town versus one far away.
Right, the impact feels more immediate.
But it's also about other kinds of closeness. Relations of blood, family ties, acquaintance, friends, colleagues, or even just long-standing custom or connection to a place or group. The closer the relation, the more vivid and intense the transferred sentiment.
So the intensity of my moral feeling, my motivation to act, depends on how similar and how close I perceive the other person to be.
That's Hume's claim. Stronger resemblance or greater contiguity leads to a greater magnitude of transferred pleasure or pain, which in turn fuels a stronger moral response, approval or disapproval, desire to help or condemnation.
So sympathy gives us the ability to feel the results of actions on the sentiments of others. We internalize their emotional state, and that feeling becomes the basis for our moral judgments and motivations.
We've now put the two pieces together, at least in theory.
Let's recap the synthesis. Husserl, starting from Solipsism, uses empathy, appresentation, pairing, analogizing apperception, spatial distinction, to painstakingly construct the alter ego, the target for moral concern.
Then Hume steps in. His mechanism of sympathy operates on this constructed other, allowing their feelings, communicated via external signs, to be transferred to the primary ego based on resemblance and contiguity.
And this transferred feeling, pleasure or pain, provides the motivation for moral action. The self becomes a moral self, precisely in this encounter, mediated by empathy and sympathy. Morality seems to emerge as an essential part of being human, even from a solipsistic start.
It looks like a complete picture, doesn't it? Existence plus motivation.
It does. But now we have to rigorously test this combined theory. Does it actually hold up? Does it create a functional solipsistic ethics, or does it collapse under scrutiny? The source suggests there are some major flaws.
Indeed. Two big ones stand out immediately when you examine the structure closely. The first flaw goes right back to the Husserlian foundation, the problem of dependency and verification.
We touched on this. Despite the elaborate construction, the other's existence never quite shakes its dependence on the primary ego, does it?
It really doesn't. My ego sets the initial boundaries of ownness. My ego performs the appresentation and analogy, and crucially, my ego remains the ultimate judge of whether the other's behavior is harmonious enough to count as evidence for their consciousness.
The pseudo-ego problem looms large again. The other is constantly auditioning for reality, judged by my standards.
Exactly. There's a fundamental hierarchy built in. The observing ego is both creator and validator of the other's status as an ego. This inherent dependency means the other lacks genuine, independent autonomy in a deep philosophical sense.
And if their autonomy is questionable, if they're just a very convincing reflection or projection, does our moral obligation towards them retain its force? It feels like the obligation might become hollow, just an obligation to a part of my own psychic landscape.
That's the structural weakness. It potentially undermines the very otherness needed for genuine ethical relation. That's the first flaw.
What's the second one? The source calls it the principle of misuse. This sounds more actively dangerous.
It is. This flaw targets both Husserl and Hume. The issue is that neither empathy nor sympathy, as mechanisms, come with a built-in moral compass. Empathy, Husserl's tool, gives me insight into how the other exists and perceives. Sympathy, Hume's tool, gives me access to what they feel, their pains, their pleasures, their vulnerabilities. These are incredibly powerful tools for understanding another being.
Okay, so what's the problem? Understanding seems good.
The problem is that understanding how someone works and what makes them tick, while that knowledge can be used for manipulation and harm just as easily as it can be used for good.
Sympathy lets me know exactly what will cause the other person pain. What stops me from using that knowledge deliberately to inflict targeted suffering, perhaps for my own gain, or even just out of malice.
Precisely. The system, as we've built it so far by combining Husserl and Hume, provides incredibly detailed information about the other, but it offers no inherent prohibition against misusing that information. It explains how we connect, but not why we should connect ethically.
It's just a mechanism, not a moral law.
Exactly. And this connects to a deeper cynicism found in thinkers like Nietzsche, as the source hints. We humans are disturbingly good at creating moral justifications for our actions, even harmful ones. Knowing something is wrong or will cause pain doesn't automatically stop us if we can rationalize it. This combined theory lacks a principle to prevent that rationalized misuse.
So, we have a structurally dependent other, and a mechanism for connection that can be weaponized. This synthesis, while ingenious, seems ethically unstable. It doesn't guarantee moral outcomes.
It fails to provide a robust internal barrier against harm.
Okay, if we want a truly functional solipsistic ethics, one that works from the inside out, we need something more. We need a guiding principle that arises directly from the core solipsistic premise itself, a principle that makes harming the other inherently illogical or self-defeating for the ego.
This is the final crucial turn in the thought experiment. We need to resolve the contradiction at the very foundation. And the proposed solution is radical. It requires a fundamental reinterpretation of the other.
How so? What's the proposal?
The proposal is the radical refutation of any truly alien ego. We have to let go of the idea that the others we construct are fundamentally separate, independent consciousnesses sealed off from us.
But Husserl works so hard to establish their otherness using space. Are we throwing that out?
In a way, yes. We stop trying to prove their independent otherness and instead embrace a deeper, unifying insight that collapses that apparent distance.
What is this unifying insight?
The insight is this. Those other egos that we perceive and interact with, the ones constructed via empathy, they aren't actually alien or separate at all. They are, in fact, simply the actualization of possibilities inherent within the primary ego itself.
Whoa. Okay, unpack that. The other person I see is me.
Not literally you in this body, but an actualized version of the potential that exists within your fundamental ego structure. Think of it like this. Your ego contains infinite possibilities for experience and being. What you perceive as other people are those possibilities made real under different conditions, different bodies, different life histories, different social contexts.
So the difference between me here and you, there isn't a difference between two fundamentally separate substances or minds, but a difference in how the same underlying potential has manifested.
That's the core idea. All selves, at the deepest level, are expressions or actualizations of the one essential ego potential. The variety we see is variation in circumstance and realization, not in fundamental being.
This is a profound shift.
Yeah.
It means there is no truly alien ego out there, because everything consciousness encounters is, in essence, a reflection or possibility of itself.
Exactly. And this realization is what provides the missing ethical principle. This is where the source brings in the incredibly helpful chess analogy.
Okay, the chess analogy. How does that clarify the ethical implication?
Imagine you're playing chess, but you're playing alone. You control both the white pieces and the black pieces. You make the moves for both sides.
Okay, I'm playing against myself.
Right. Both sides, white and black, are equally your sides. You might be strategizing for white, then strategizing for black, trying to win with one against the other. But ultimately, the entire game, both players, both sets of intentions, originate from you.
So if I'm playing black and I decide to cheat, maybe sneakily remove a white pawn when I'm not looking.
Who are you actually cheating?
Myself. I'm cheating myself.
Yeah.
If I deliberately make a bad move for white just so black can win easily, I'm undermining my own game, my own total effort.
Precisely. Now apply this to the solipsistic insight. The primary ego, black, perceives an alter ego, white. This alter ego is understood not as alien, but as an actualization of the primary ego's own potential.
So if I, the primary ego, try to harm or exploit that alter ego,
I am quite literally harming or exploiting a manifestation of myself. I am damaging a possibility of my own being. I am introducing conflict and incoherence into the total field of my own actualized potential.
sympathy still lets me feel the pain I inflict.
Yes, but now, combined with the insight that the other is me, actualized differently, the act of causing that pain becomes not just unpleasant, but fundamentally irrational. Self-defeating, like the chess player cheating against themselves.
This provides the internal, inescapable guiding principle we were looking for. The moral imperative becomes act towards these other actualizations of self in a way that preserves the overall integrity and harmony of the total self, the one ego encompassing all possibilities.
Exactly. Harming the other is harming the self. Yeah. Helping the other is helping the self. Self-interest and altruism become structurally identical at this fundamental level.
This results in an ethical framework that is genuinely solipsistic, grounded entirely within the single ego's understanding of its own nature, yet fully functional and prohibitive of misuse. It doesn't need external laws or gods or abstract duties.
The ethics arises naturally from the ego's recognition of its own extended nature. The misuse of empathy and sympathy is blocked because it's recognized as self-mutilation. It's a self-contained, self-correcting moral system.
So let's try to quickly summarize the whole journey. We started with a seemingly impossible contradiction: solipsistic ethics.
We used Husserl's empathy to construct the idea of the other, the alter ego, from purely internal resources, battling the verification problem along the way.
Then we brought in Hume's sympathy to provide the motivational engine, allowing feelings to transfer between the ego and its constructed other, based on resemblance and contiguity.
But we found that synthesis flawed, the other remained dependent, and the mechanism could be misused.
Until we reached the final insight, reframing the alter ego not as alien, but as an actualization of the primary ego's own potential.
Which, via the chess analogy, revealed the core solipsistic ethical principle. Harming the other is harming oneself. This grounds morality internally and prevents misuse.
This deep dive really shows something quite amazing, that even if you start from the most radically individualistic, seemingly isolated philosophical point imaginable, solipsism,
a robust, compelling, and internally consistent moral code can still emerge, provided the self truly understands the nature of its own projections, its own possibilities made manifest in what appears to be others.
It's a fascinating resolution. And it leaves us, and you listening, with a final, maybe quite provocative thought to chew on.
Go on.
If this model holds, if our moral actions towards others are, at the deepest level, actions taken towards ourselves playing a different role on the board, if the distinction between here and there ultimately collapses in an ethical sense because we are all manifestations of the same potential.
Yes.
How does that change the way we think about decisions affecting large groups or society or even seemingly distant strangers? Does the concept of self-sacrifice for the greater good even make sense anymore? If the greater good is just the good of the total self in all its manifestations, does the entire ethical weight shift?
Does the chess player truly sacrifice a pawn if both sides are ultimately their own? An interesting question to ponder as you navigate the world and all your potential selves within it.
Definitely something to mull over. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.